do it across other schools too. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jen.
Okay.
All right, do I have any others? Okay. Thank you very much. We will now move on with the meeting. At this point, we will do the approval of minutes. We have executive session minutes for September 3rd, 2020, September 9th, 2020, September 10th, 2020, September 11th, 2020, and September 17th, 2020. Do I have a move to, or motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second?
Second, Anna Mae.
All right. Now, Tim, do you recommend that we hold those minutes at this point for, because they relate to current negotiations?
I believe up until 9/11, I think up until 9/11, that was all related to the MOA that has been signed and
Okay.
posted. However,
right.
9/17, I would ask that we hold.
Okay, so we will hold the 17th. So let's hold a vote on that. So 9/3, 9/9, 9/10, 9/11 will be released and 9/17 will be held. And are we okay with me adapting that motion? Yes, okay. So let's get a vote. Leo? Aye.
Oh, I think I was just calling the vote? Yeah. Aye.
Yes, I'm calling the vote. Thanks. Tim?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Anna Mae?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then we have regular open session meetings for 8/13, 2020, 9/10, 2020, 9/11, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, Tim moves, and do I have a second?
Second.
Leo seconds, and vote.
Aye.
Leo, Tim,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Anna Mae,
Aye.
and Jessica Riley, aye. Okay, we are on to elementary principals opening report under new business.
Madam Chair, Dr. Billsborough, Mrs. Caulfield, Brennan are in attendance this evening to do their customary opening. Please.
A customary opening report for a very non-customary year. And they will be presenting this together, right?
Right.
Okay. And is Stephen? There he is. All right, so welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I do appreciate it. And I know that you guys have been working incredibly hard. This has been a year. I don't use any of those words anymore, the unprecedented, uncharted territory or anything like that. But I do have to tell you how much we appreciate your work for the last 7 months, but intensively through the summer and through the fall. And I just need you to know that that's something that we have been able to watch and marvel at. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those kind words. I'm going to start us off tonight. So good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Dr. Marsden. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you this evening and to talk about the opening of the 2021 school year. In the spirit of collaboration, as you just heard, teamwork, consistency, and Holly, Steve, and I thought that it would make the most sense for us to combine our opening reports as opposed to splitting them up as we have done in the past. We have been and will continue to work closely as all of our grade level teams and staffs have been doing, as we recognize that this is really what is best for our students and their families. So tonight, each of us are going to start by sharing some staffing and enrollment updates for each of our buildings, and then we will also share some additional highlights across the 3 elementary schools. Before I begin, though, I just would be remiss if I didn't state that this year's opening would not have been possible without the combined efforts of our teaching staffs, technology departments, secretaries, custodians, and central office staff. It has been and continues to be a team effort, and Holly, Steve, and I are so grateful for everyone's efforts with that. So I'm just going to start, like I said, by sharing the new staff members who started at Memorial this year. We just have a few. The first one is Colleen McDonald. She is one of our full-day kindergarten teachers this year. Carrie Clark is a kindergarten teaching assistant. Lynn Bean is a teaching assistant, and Jack Dugan joined us as a teaching assistant. Currently, our enrollment at Memorial is 391 students, which consists of 28 preschoolers, 164 kindergarten students, and 189 first graders. We have 4 cohorts, as you know, that are running simultaneously, and there are 153 students in cohort A, 161 students in cohort B, 30 students in cohort C, which is made up of 12 kindergartners and 18 first graders, and 26 students who are joining us from cohort D, again, 11 kindergartners and 15 first graders. So now I'm going to turn it over to Holly for her update.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to share our opening comments with you. So we have several new staff as well to join our staff. We have Melissa Newton, who is our second grade long-term substitute for Cindy Previty. We have Teresa Lynn Stewart, who is our cohort D grade 2 teacher. Sarah Heavey is our cohort D grade 3 teacher. Brennan Norcross is our cohort C teacher. Amy Keegan is our school nurse, and we have a few teaching assistants, Kim Jolene, who was in our cafeteria last year and has come over to help us out in the school building, Kim Shura, and Shannon Briscoe. Currently, we're very excited to have all those individuals at Wheelock. Currently, the enrollment at Wheelock is 383 students. In grade 2, our cohort A is 81 students. Our cohort B is 94 students. Cohort D is 17 students. In grade 3, our cohort A is 88 students. Our cohort B is 87 students. And our cohort D is 15 students. In cohort CA, there are 7 second graders and 13 third graders. In our cohort BC, there are 9 second graders and 4 third graders. And now I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Holly. And yes, thank you everybody for allowing us to come on and speak about the beginning part of the school year. Dale Street was extremely fortunate as well to hire some new staff this year. We have Mr. Joe Ahern is our technology integration specialist. Good timing for him to jump on. Miss Allison Fox is a long-term sub for the year in grade 4. Mr. Shane Kruth is a special education support teacher, and he came over from Wheelock to Dale Street. Miss Andrea Morello is a general ed aide, and that's a long-term position for the year. Miss Nicole Plimpton is a grade 4 teacher that was hired this year. Miss Becky Ryan is our behavior specialist, and we share Becky with Wheelock, and she moved down from the high school to get some time for Dale Street this year. Miss Paige Slotza is a grade 4 long-term sub for the year. Miss Marina Sweeney is our library media specialist. Miss Amanda Tumbleson is our music teacher. And Mrs. Amy Tyre is a special education aide. Currently, Dale Street's enrollment is 407 students. That's 196 fourth graders and 211 fifth graders. Dale Street saw no net change in the enrollment over the summer. We had 10 new students enroll, and we also had a combined 10 students withdraw. There are 178 students in our current cohort A in person on Monday and Tuesday. There are 170 students in cohort B, and that's in person on Thursday and Friday. We have 27 students in our cohort D, which is our remote only, being taught by Miss Shannon Dowd, who is a 4th grade teacher here. She's currently the 27 students is a mix between grades 4 and 5. And additionally, there are 20 students that are in the AC cohort, and we have 12 students in the BC cohort. Those students are working in our LMC at the time. The staff at each one of the elementary schools have worked very collaboratively to get the most out of each other and the most out of themselves. So Missy, Holly, and I believe this to be true for the 3 of us as well. And as Missy mentioned in her opening remarks, we are going to present this evening using that same philosophy. We have highlighted what we think are 3 critical areas regarding the start of school, and would like to share them with you now. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly to get us kicked off.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm going to start by talking about the student experience, which is always at the core of all of our planning. So as an elementary team, all of our decisions revolve around what is best for our students. In that vein, we spent a good amount of time this summer on a reentry plan to create protocols and procedures specific for each building. The protocols included procedures regarding arrival and dismissal, which included creating a brand new drop-off and pickup procedure for each of our schools. Other protocols included bathroom procedures while maintaining social distance. Believe it or not, that is a hot topic at the elementary level. Traveling through the hallways, lunch and recess. At recess, we decided to designate 3 specific areas, and 2 classes are assigned each day to those areas. We are rotating them so children are getting experiences in different areas. We also have planned whole school assemblies covering various topics such as back to school and Constitution Day. At Wheelock and Dale Street School, we are continuing to have our student councils. We will also be celebrating Halloween at each elementary school. This will include encouraging students to dress up in their costumes during their Wednesday whole class Zoom. Teachers are planning on having the party in the bag, which we started at the elementary level last year. And at Memorial and Wheelock, we will be having a virtual Halloween parade. So we're encouraging parents to send in pictures of their students in their Halloween costume, and we will be making a video to share with the whole school. PTO has also donated a large pumpkin to each elementary school, and students will be entered into a Guess the Weight contest. Teachers and staff are really working hard to provide quality instruction both in person and remotely. This is a large focus. There is a large focus on consistency and as well. Finally, to help make the students' experience positive, we are working to provide consistent communication to families. And I'm going to turn it over to Missy, who's going to tell you about the communication piece.
Thanks so much, Holly. So as Holly just stated, we truly value the homeschool partnership and continue to work hard to build relationships with our families while still providing consistent communication. So a few examples of these efforts include the open house that we held at the beginning of the school year, during which time students were able to come into the building, see their classrooms, and meet their teacher. One of my favorite things that we've done, I can't tell you, every time I think about it, it still makes me smile, as it was that first sense of return to normalcy of having those smiling faces back in the building. We've also done, most recently, our first ever virtual PIN presentations, in which all staff members created a video to introduce and share a little bit about themselves. And slides were created also as well by grade level teams and special subject teachers to provide specific or content specific information, as to what kids would be learning this year. Holly, Steve, and I have also offered a total of 3 parent webinars thus far, one centered around the reopening of school, one on Google Classroom for Wheelock and Dale Street families, and one on Seesaw for Memorial families. Each webinar included an opportunity for attendees to ask questions and was also recorded for families who were not able to attend at the scheduled time. And lastly, we continue to communicate on a weekly basis about school-based happenings through emails and blogs. We are mindful of our families' schedules as well as the quantity of emails that they are managing, and hope that by offering different forms of communication in the know in a way that works for most of them. So at this time, Steve is going to share some information about what the staff at each building have accomplished to date.
Thanks, Missy. The elementary staff has worked extremely hard, Jess, as you had mentioned before, even before school opened, to make sure that the students' return to school since last March was the safest and very best it could be. This tireless work from the staff began in July as the elementary reopening committee was formed under the leadership of Dr. Marsden and Mrs. Power. This group had the monumental task of crafting 3 separate reopening plans, not knowing which direction the year would take us in. The work they completed to supported students, staff in the district, and it was simply amazing. It was so wonderful and rewarding for the 3 principals to work with all of them. They were fantastic. Our collaboration with staff continued as we met and are continuing to meet with our grade level leaders from all 3 schools. Each of the principals meets individually with our grade level leaders, but we felt it was critical to meet as an elementary group as well. Topics when we meet, usually Wednesdays, range from student feedback to virtual notebooks, successes and obstacles, and staff emotions and feelings. The leaders of each grade level bring something different to the table, but one thing that is constant and for sure is the elementary grades really want to do what's best for our students, and they work so tirelessly to do so. As mentioned, one of the biggest and most important changes to the student learning are the virtual notebooks. Each week, the staff sends out a virtual notebook, which provides an overview of the week. The notebooks provide asynchronous remote lessons, step-by-step activities, and specialist information for students. We are not sure if you've had the opportunity to view any of the notebooks, but if you haven't, we strongly encourage that you do. They are amazing. There's so much work that's put into them. The time, energy, and effort that goes into these from the grade levels is simply remarkable. The final thing that I would like to highlight is the work the staff are doing on the Wednesday remote days. Staff across the district have worked incredibly hard to include a more robust and consistent schedule across the grade levels, including additional synchronous lessons for more face-to-face time with students. The three of us have all jumped onto these lessons and they're fantastic. In the afternoon, grade levels and departments are meeting to strategize the best ways to deliver curriculum during both in-person and remote days. As you can imagine, it's like doing two different jobs. However, the staff continue to work very hard, planning late into the evenings and on the weekends to provide the best experience for our students. Jess, you had mentioned the current situation we find ourselves in is unprecedented. We continue to look to the best way to connect 2 points at the opposite ends of a continuum, COVID-19 and 21st century education. I'd like to conclude again by commending the elementary staff for their flexibility, commitment to providing a positive and beneficial learning environment for our students during these challenging times. Their adaptability, patience, and professionalism are much appreciated and are the primary reason that it has been such a successful and positive start to the school year at Memorial, Wheelock, and Dale. They are heroes in the three of our eyes, in many of the eyes of the families in Medfield. Missy and Holly and I thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. We are more than welcome to take any questions for the three of us at this time.
Okay, does anyone on the committee have some questions or for any of the elementary teachers? Anything that you're curious about, things that you haven't heard about or you have heard about that you're interested in?
Holly, is Franklin obeying the 6-foot rule?
Muted. Holly, I was just curious, is Franklin following the 6-foot rule? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. No, we have a schedule set up, but there is a protocol that goes along with it where the students hand sanitize prior to petting him and then after.
Can I ask, aside from the obvious that this year has been challenging anyway, was there something that struck you as the biggest challenge and the biggest, or the thing that you thought would be a challenge that ended up being much easier than you thought it would be? Do you have any thought on that? Missy, you all seem to be smiling.
Yeah.
Missy, you want to go ahead?
I think, from the perspective of mask wearing and the ability of the youngest students in our district to be able to maintain masks for the period of time that we are asking them to, and also to maintain distance, I was concerned about that. And they have knocked it out of the park. They are absolutely amazing. It's really a non-issue for the kids, and I couldn't be more proud of them. So that was that's one for me. Okay. Anything
more challenging than you thought it would be?
Me?
I mean, aside from everything.
I think it's just the preparedness to switch at any given moment, and the unknown is probably, that's kind of the challenge that I think of.
Yeah. Okay. Holly?
I would agree with Missy. Seeing the kids come into the building was just amazing, the energy that's in the school. I would say one thing that I thought was actually keeping, there's a fly in my office. I'm so sorry. One thing that was keeping me up at night prior to opening was arrival and dismissal, and it surprisingly has gone very, very smoothly, which makes me, really happy. And I think it makes parents happy as well.
Anything challenging that you just didn't expect to be that challenging, or just surprised you? Because I do find I wake up at the beginning of my day and say, wow, I wonder what's going to be just even that much harder than usual today sometimes.
I think just, keeping the teacher's spirit up, because it's just wrapping their head around the way that the week works, and just knowing that they have the brain power that goes into just making the week go smoothly has been a lot. So just sort of supporting them and giving them, throwing them a bone here and there. But that's been, I didn't really realize how difficult that would be.
Right. And I think that we've all seen, and certainly the teachers have reflected that there are many, many parents who have been fantastic, but there's a lot of criticism, whether it's meant to be or not, pretty frequently. And I think that people who take care of our kids and have elected to do that for their lives, and then to all of a sudden be in a position in which they have no more control than the rest of us, I think that's one of the things that I've heard from our teachers, that they just feel like this is so hard, and they are working so hard to make it work, and that we're finding ourselves in this position that we have to make these decisions on the fly, and none of them are great, and this is not what any of us want. So,
question I had on the same vein of that: are we able to provide any services of any kind for staff? As far as support, maybe just because of pressure, whether it's services to call, and if you know what I'm talking about.
Like EAP services and
Sure, yeah.
things like that, kind of just mentoring. I mean, I know that most teachers, many of them are just such good friends at this point anyway, but I can't imagine being new within a district within this particular time. I mean, that's got to be.
On each other, they're working together, they're collaborating more than they ever have. We talk about, one of the positive byproducts of the pandemic, and what we've looked at in terms of education, has been the increased teacher collaboration. Has been outstanding. They've really broken down the walls in terms of my own space, and they've worked really well together. And that's pre-K to 12. They've all done a great job of that, understanding that they're definitely stronger when they work together, and
Jeff, you need to unmute.
Collaborate to provide those, consistent. I'm on mute. Can you guys hear me?
No, it's the Zoom world. Can't hear you.
Should I unmute both for one? You can hear me?
Oh.
Okay. Anyway, they've done a great job with that, with the collaboration piece. And I think that's something that they'll take away once we someday get back to normal. That's going to be a great learning experience for everyone.
Steve?
Yeah, I would say, I think the kids, first of all, it's great to have them in the building, but it's amazing. And I guess it shouldn't surprise me, because they're so resilient in what they do. So for them to be following the protocols, we all sent out videos of what those would look like. I think they were helpful to their kids before they got to school, so they could kind of get acclimated a little bit. Like Holly, it kind of kept me up at night, the engineering part of arrival and dismissal. I get to see Leo most days dropping off there. So, but after the first or second day, I think Leo may concur or disagree, but I think it's gone swimmingly, and it's really through the help of the staff that's there. I think the biggest challenge that I find here is time. They always talk about in education, it's time and money, right? And luckily, Jeff and Michael have been very open to trying to get us whatever we need, whether it's, PPE stuff or just things to make it work. But it's hard to get time for the teachers. So, Holly, Missy, and I are trying to be creative to do different things to get them, a little bit more time than they can have. And it is, I mean, I think the other part is the social part. You referenced it, Jess, that these teachers that are in these buildings are such good friends too. And there's a social, and Nat Vaughn said it at our admin meeting last week, there's a social component to teaching as well. And they don't really have that right now. They're really, they might not be in the lunchroom, they don't have the planning time might be a little bit different because specials are all over the map right now. So I think it's just watching out. It ties into what Holly had said. It's just watching out for them because it's every staff member. Again, I know that Jeff's in the same boat. Our wives both teach in different districts. I see my wife planning 5 hours or 6 hours on the weekend. So they're doing a ton of stuff behind the scenes. I know the teachers here are they're such perfectionists, which is great in a lot of levels, but we just have to make sure that we say to them, do the best you can, but you can't go overboard because they're not going to be good for anybody at that point. But they love the kids and want to just please the kids and the parents so much. So I think time is probably the biggest thing for me.
One more question. We've talked a lot about in-school time. I'm sorry, Anna Mae, would you like to go ahead first? Or
Well, you know what? I just, on this theme here, I just want to, mental health is in our hearts and minds for not only our teachers, but our students. And I suppose that's just what I think about most. And I'm wondering about, and we spoke about this last year, but I'm wondering about, the safety nets that we have at each of your schools for our kids who are probably not processing this, really well, and even the parents, so I'm wondering if you could please share with us.
Yeah, Anna Mae, I was going to piggyback something similar. Some districts are offering services for parents, similar, the stress of handling the hybrid and the constant shifting around. And
these times are hard, and they're hard for everyone. So, and I know Dave Wordley has been great in sharing a lot of SEL resources, but I know each school is just more in tune with obviously with the children and the families, and just wondering what each school is offering to help support our families mentally.
So I think at Memorial, the teachers are our first line of defense in terms of they're spending the most time with the students that are in their classrooms. So they're getting to know them, they're communicating with families and really getting a pulse on how everyone is doing. We are incredibly fortunate to have Kathy Bockhorst and Pam Tobin, both on staff as a school psychologist and our guidance counselor. And they are constantly checking in with teachers as well, offering resources and just there to take a pulse and also to provide families with what they need, even if it's just a phone call and a check-in and people say, yep, we're doing okay, or no, we need some assistance, and then they are able to send them in the right direction. So I think it's those constant check-ins. I think it's also trying to keep in mind too that although we are, I think it's 25, 26 days into school at this point, there's really only been about half of that when we've had the kids in person with us, and they're still getting to know one another and kind of navigate through that relationship building that is usually much farther along at this time. So really trying to help facilitate classroom culture and relationship building that way, because we find that goes a long way in terms of making kids feel comfortable at school and hopefully able to open up if they're struggling and having any difficulties.
Just to add to that, I think at each building we have like a group that meets regularly, including our guidance, school psychologist, school nurse, and we update on students. So if there are students at risk or things are bubbling up, we all sort of brainstorm and come up with a plan to make sure that no child is slipping between the cracks. And that, again, as Missy said, it comes from the teacher usually, but there may be other things outside at recess, or so if we have a running doc on that and just sort of keep track of, which kids we might have concerns about and make sure that we're following up with them.
Yeah, and they've been super busy. As they said, the guidance counselors and school psychologists, it's so great that we have them, pre this, it's been definitely a priority for, for central office and administration to have, those people. And I think I had 2 emails tonight from Elizabeth Stregolowski about, certain kids as I was, here at school for the meeting. So those Monday meetings are really important because, again, Kathy Thompson is the nurse here at Dale Street, and she does a fabulous job. But to have the nurses involved as well in those guidance check-in meetings that we have weekly is really important to say, this is somebody we got to keep a special eye on, or if somebody knows of a family situation that one of us can reach out, it's important to do that.
I also
Thank
think, just to throw it out there, that because I know that some parents of younger kids have contacted me and said, listen, I'm here with a kindergartner and I'm trying to teach them, and I've got a 3-year-old and I've got a 2-year-old and I'm about to go out of my tree, and I feel that I remember that feeling. It was so intense. And one of the things I want to kind of remind people about too is that we do have an amazing set of professionals at the Medfield Outreach. Kathy McDonald and Chelsea are longtime professionals, and they are there that you can simply call them. You can find their number on the town website. If there are those days where you just feel like you are about to really lose it, or just lose it a little, and you need just a little bit of support or just a moment or just a referral, they're also somebody they would be an astounding resource for you. We, as schools, we always want to know, but there's also a part of being able to reach out outside of the schools as well to be able to get those resources, because I think that this is a time where it would be so easy to lose our connection to community. And I think in a lot of ways it's leveled up, but in a lot of ways it's also harder to reach out. So just for those parents who are new within the environment too.
And I remind everyone about Interface too.
Right.
That's a great service that our community has, that we belong to, we're partners with, and Interface can give you a referral to any type of counseling or services that you may need. So we have that information on our website, and we have cards that we give out. It's posted in every school. So I would encourage people to use Interface as well.
Right. So, anyone else have any questions? Anna Mae, anything about the hybrid days in which kids are at home and kind of what they're seeing, or anything like that? Do you guys have any specific comments about a hybrid that you feel like you really want to put out there about the remote days for your kids?
I would put out there, and you just mentioned it, Jess, it's hard. I mean, I think that, we all have children as well, and trying to do that in our own towns, like, trying to, be a parent, but also be a worker and that type of stuff. It's challenging stuff. I think that our teachers learned from March. I think they did a great job in March in the emergency, but I think they learned and worked throughout the summer and in the time before school, and really have done some wonderful things. The teachers have collaborated, teamed up, so they're doing it by subject area. And, they really are, for some of the science lessons, they're going outside, they're doing this, but they're presenting those asynchronous lessons so that the kids can be acclimated to what they're going to be learning that day, not just like do page 5 or something like that. So Holly, Missy, and I often share, what our schools are doing. We often go on to the other schools and watch them, and they're amazing. The amount of time that they're putting in, support staff is helping out as well. So I think that, if people are having trouble with remote, definitely reach out to us, because again, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can, but it is hard. We're elementary teachers and staff, and we want kids to be here, and we want to be shoulder to shoulder with them. I think about Missy's kids, as I referenced my wife before, she's a first grade teacher in a different town. Like, they need to be shoulder to shoulder. Like, we want that, and we hope to get to that soon, but we're doing everything in our power to give them the best education possible in our current situation.
It's also hard that everything is dependent on technology, which can be very unpredictable. And so I often have Zoom nightmares, and I know the teachers do as well. So that's another sort of layer to it, especially on the remote days.
And I also think too, like if we can ask for some patience with things, that we're trying new things and we're encouraging our staff to try new things. And some things are going to work really, really well, and some things might not. And I think that's part of the educational process and part of what we want our teachers to constantly be, stretching themselves to figure out what's best for kids. So just asking for a little patience with those things. If you're seeing something that doesn't work, trust me, we know that when it doesn't work, and we're constantly working to try to adjust that to make it better.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you too. Many of you know my youngest is in 5th grade, so I've been following the webinars that you guys have been putting on, and they've been tremendous. And just my hat's off to all 3 of you for just leading with such warmth and grace and positivity. I know that this has been a very difficult time, and people who feel as if their kids' education and well-being is in jeopardy can, come at you. And we've all felt it. And I just commend you for rising above and staying positive and leading and showing our children what good leadership looks like, and being a good example. So my thanks to you.
Thank you for that, Megan.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.
Hey, well done.
Yeah, go back to your family. Right, we all need family time.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry, I was not unmuted. Go back to your families. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The next thing that we need to go to is the fiscal year 22 budget calendar, which is, yeah, we can hit that first. All right, so you go ahead.
In your materials, you have the up-to-date school handbooks for all 5 schools. You'll notice one of the things we had to wait for was the Title IX update in the training that we had. So all administrators were trained yesterday in Title IX by our law firm. We had that updated training. There's really some interesting changes in the way we process and how we do things. It's really amazing. Our attorney said that, depending on what happens in a couple of weeks, it may swing back the other way, but that might take at least two school years for that to happen. So we want to make sure that we were trained and we were all on board of what we need to do, because the changes are very different than what all of us have been in education for a long time, and they're substantial. So that's all updated. The high school has a link, the elementary, that'll have it in there. Have not the whole policy, but have a reference in the reference that our attorneys gave us in the handbooks. And I would ask you just if you have any questions. I don't know if there are any school specific questions I can do my best to answer, but if not, ask you to approve as you've done each year.
All right. Do we feel as though we'd like to approve as a group, assuming that the
I'm sorry. Would we feel as though we wanted to approve as a group all 5 handbooks, or would we like to go individually per? How do you feel about that? Are there any specific notes you have about any of them? Then
I didn't have I skimmed them. I didn't have anything specific. So
right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve them, the student handbooks for the 2021 school year.
Okay, so yep, for Memorial School, Wheelock, the middle school, and the high school, and Dale. Okay.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Megan seconds, and Leo,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Anna Mae,
Aye.
and Jessica Riley. Aye. The motion passes, and the handbooks are approved. Okay, shall we go on to the fiscal year 22 budget calendar, which is ironic because I'm not even sure that we are done or fully approved with fiscal year 21. So.
Need to unmute Mike.
Okay, so I worked with Dr. Marsden on the fiscal year, 22 budget calendar. It's fast approaching. So tonight is October 22nd, and we need to adopt our budget calendar. as we have to start the process of fiscal year 22 on November 2nd, where the superintendent and I start meeting with the leadership team to go over the operation and capital budget. And then from there, there's the schedule of certain deadlines that have to be met as we go through fiscal year 21 to prepare for fiscal year 22. So there's the different deadlines that are on there. There is a town charter that we have to provide our budget to the town manager by, town administrator by a specific date, which is outlined in this calendar. So we have to have our budget presented and voted on, and having a public hearing by the January 21st, so we can submit our budget to the town administrator by February 3rd.
I know I've spoken individually with Megan about whether she would be the liaison for the school committee and the warrant committee and the budget process. Still good with that?
You're muted, Jess.
Don't ask twice, Jess.
Jess, you're muted.
So, yes, so we will repeat that same exchange. So I have asked Megan to be the liaison between the warrant committee and the, as the school committee kind of, sorry. And she'll be taking on that role this year. Megan, do you have any thoughts or about the dates or?
They look good and scary to me. Here we go.
You will not be alone. All right, okay. I would make or ask for a motion without. I'm sorry, I would ask for a motion if we don't have any further discussion on the specific calendar about approving the school budget calendar for fiscal year 22.
So moved.
Okay, so Megan, and then second?
Second.
Okay, Leo second, and Leo?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Anna Marie?
Aye.
And Jessica Riley, aye. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, absolutely. All right, now, this is if I could ask you, Owen, to bring Brian Gavigan and Eric over. We are going to discuss the Mascot task force at this point. It's kind of an informational. So we'll wait for you to get in here. I'm sorry, it's Eric Ornberg.
Leo, are you unmuting before you speak?
Yeah, I'm leaving it unmuted. I use the earbud. Yeah, I'm using the earbud though, that's so it doesn't cause the feedback. It's Tanya. She's Tanya.
Hi there,
Okay.
Brian and Eric.
Folks.
How are you? So just to kind of introduce this this summer, for those of you who weren't here or didn't participate in the 3-hour public forum, we decided as a school committee that at this point we felt as though the logo that we had been using, the Warrior Head logo, was not one that we felt best represented the Medfield Public Schools, either in our understanding of equity or in the kind of modern times that we are living in, and that it was a symbol that we felt and had been told was not respectful in the way that perhaps people thought had been an honor. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. The other part of the discussion that we wanted to have a longer community discussion about was whether we continue to retain the name of Warrior. If we do, what does that look like? Are we able to divorce it from the association that it had had previously with Native American imagery and Mascot? And if not, what would that new symbol be? So Eric and Brian both stepped up. Thank you very much to lead that task force. And maybe I'll hand over to you, Brian. Do you want to talk a little bit about, or Eric, a little bit about what our charge is? Because we had a discussion about kind of what our charge is around this, what our mission is, and then a little bit about how that process around recruitment will work.
Sure, absolutely. And first off, thank you for making the time for us to talk about this. We certainly feel it's an important issue, but at the same time, listening to everything else that you're discussing right now, there are a lot of really important issues. And also just, thank you to Dr. Marsden for reaching out to Eric and I and inviting us to be part of this work. It's something we're both really passionate about. So to be able to dig into this is something that we feel privileged to do. I would say when Dr. Marsden first reached out, and speaking from the I on this one, I felt pretty strongly that I didn't want this task force to be something that was just the opinions of a small group of people. I think our overarching goal here is really to engage as much of the town as possible in this conversation and really look at all stakeholders. And I think the four main groups that we identified were, especially the students currently in the building, also all of the residents in town, alumni, and then also staff. I think all four have different levels of engagement and investment in this conversation. And I think hearing as broad a message as possible from all of them will be really important to help inform this decision. So our charge, and I know, Jess and Jeff, I think you've probably had more conversations around the charge than Eric and I have. So certainly fill in anything that we miss here. But really we're charged with gathering as much information as possible, getting as many voices from the community as possible for this, and then really making a recommendation in the June timeframe to Dr. Marsden on the community as a whole feels that we should keep the warrior as our name or move on from that. And if so, if we are moving on, what's our suggestion moving forward with that? So I'll pause for a minute just to make sure there's any other details to fill in.
No, I think it's, oh, go ahead, Eric.
I would just echo Brian's thoughts. I am honored to be a part of this conversation as well. I think the decision that was made by school committee in August, I had written a letter to everyone just hoping that there would be some type of committee like this where we could make the decision into more of an action plan. So to be a part of this and to be able to bring in alumni and students and continue to have a dialogue. And Brian made a point in our first meeting about trying to model an appropriate dialogue where there may be some varying perspectives and opinions, but to try to show respect to, again, the history, try to make this an informative event for everybody who's a part of it, to try to create some type of a long-term history assignment where we can all learn a little bit more about the history of where the warrior came from. And then to, again, ultimately our decision isn't to decide, our job is to basically make a recommendation. So to be a part of that is something that I know Brian and I have spoke with at length that we're firmly invested in, given the years of service to the town and working here and seeing this big decision get made that is certainly a polarizing one in a lot of different parts of our state and country.
I think that's well put. I think that the kind of operationally how we're thinking about this working is that we will recruit a core group of 20. We felt is that was a group that we could, from those different perspectives, from town and students and staff, and be able to bring those people together so that they can also communicate out. And we can have discussions. And then we have a pretty specific kind of timeline to be able to make that discussion or make that decision by June. This will involve students, honestly, this is your school, right? And this is staff school. We're not talking about some people have said, isn't this supposed to come to a town meeting or whatever? It's not. This is really a school symbol, but I do think it is a community discussion about what we feel is kind of the kernel of Medfield. What do we want to carry forward? What do we want to do to represent who we are across all areas, not simply sports, but really truly, across the arts and across what is a Medfield artisan, what is a kid who is into computers, what is our front facing, how do we want to represent ourselves? We will be sending out, and I want to make sure that I am not interfering with any of the other very important things that are happening out of Dr. Marsden's office right now, but we will be sending out essentially a call for people. There are some people that we have very specifically identified because we know that they're very kind of crucial to this group. But we will also be sending out a call specifically to ask people if they can share their opinions and have a discussion in which they are not taking one side or the other necessarily, but they are able to hear everyone, that they can have and then we'll do education and kind of level setting around where we are and what a mascot is and how it represents people. And then we'll kind of have those discussions and those feedback loops from the different constituents over the next several months, but that should be coming within the next few weeks. Again, I want to make sure that I'm not trampling on anything that is it's coming out of Dr. Marsden's office that has to do with how we're delivering education, right? So, do you guys have any other comments, or do we think we're good here for right now?
I think that covers a lot of it. And I think just to add on to what you said about for the people who are interested in possibly volunteering to help us with this decision, I think the biggest thing that we would like to see and are looking for is someone with the ability and willingness to really reach out to the community and get as broad a message as possible. I know Eric and I could go on for a long time about our personal opinions about this and what we've looked into with this. But at the end of the day, if I was the staff liaison, my job is to reach out to as many staff members who feel an investment in this and represent their voice. And we want the same thing from our student reps, our resident reps, and our alumni reps. And really get as many people out there who feel passionate about this to feel they've had a voice in this decision. Like, that's at the end of the day, whatever we decide, we don't want someone feeling like I didn't have a say in what's moving forward.
Anna Mae?
Hi, fellas. Thank you again for joining the task force. Both of you wrote very compelling letters back in August. So thank you again. And I appreciate the sentiment and the spirit of this task force. I think that's really important. I just want to make sure that we did have a community volunteer step up. I wanted just to confirm that she was still on board, Jean Minio. Because during her speech, she actually volunteered to be the community liaison. So, sorry.
Holding her to it.
I know. When we have volunteers, I don't want to let go. So
I completely appreciate that. I think that we are just in the beginning of the recruitment process, and I will certainly reach out to Jean because I do know that she volunteered. But I also want to make sure that everybody has kind of an equal. And I said that there are certain stakeholders that we feel are important. But I also want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. I don't want anyone who is watching to feel as though the deck is stacked one way or the other. And I don't say that is what Jean would do at all.
No, that absolutely not.
But she has volunteered, and I appreciate that. But I also want to make sure that I didn't really want to talk about anybody specific tonight.
Right, but because we have spoken about it before publicly, and because Jean did speak publicly, I just want to make a note that because I am grateful for anyone who wants to step up, And
Sure.
I believe that she is an effective community leader. So I just want to plant that seed because I didn't want that to go away. And I know there were other alumni who were vested, and I'm sure you've got your process, but I just didn't want folks who stepped up originally not be part of the program.
Right. And
Thank
we
you.
have reached out to, or I have reached out to certain people as well.
Okay, great. Super. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Okay. We are going to move on to old business, which just seems more like, oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Marsden, do you have anything for other items since posting on October 20th? Okay, thank you. We're going to move to old business, but I am going to move 2 items around. The school reopening update was supposed to happen first, but I actually feel like the budget year 21 update is something that is important and impacts on almost everything we do right now. So Michael, if you could go through the fiscal year 21 budget update now, because I think that there are some significant concerns we have about the budget that I think need to be part of the context of the discussion. And okay.
Yeah, so at our last meeting, we went through some of the items that we expected to be incurred for schools. Went through some of them were CARES money, some of them were out of a federal grant, others were out of operational. So the expenses haven't slowed down. I mean, that's the thing, the message you need to understand, I guess, is that it still costs a lot of money to wipe these chairs down every time, every period, every class. We're spending, tens of thousands of dollars just on cleaning supplies every single month. So
we burned through what, $47,000? I mean, I think people need to know the actual.
It's up there. So it's over 40,000 in the cleaning supplies. And I know Megan is signing the bills and she sees them
in September.
She sees them and they keep adding up. So I think it's important for folks to understand, and it's really in the context of the conversation that we've had, I think, since the summer around Chapter 70, where we were looking at additional funding. If you remember, FY21 budget was based upon a reduction of 10% Chapter 70 money, sometimes called local aid. But the Chapter 70 money is what is earmarked directly to schools. So our budget was based on that 10% reduction, yet what we've learned since then is that it's going to be level funded from FY20. So that means that there is a sum of money that is earmarked to schools that should be coming our way. This is probably the 5th meeting we've talked about this. So I think it's a really important thing that we have to have that conversation to make sure that money earmarked to the schools goes to the schools. And whether it's, the money has been settled over the summer or at town meeting, all the budgets were set there. But again, we're operating on that 10% cut, which is now not happening to local, the towns and cities, and also school districts. So there is potentially $500,000 to $600,000 that is earmarked for the school department that should be coming to us. So, Michael, you want to go through some of that spreadsheet that has some of the costs we've had so far?
Yeah, correct. And on this sheet, you're not going to see what, so like today, I approved another $12,000 of wipes that are not on the spreadsheet. I also approved another $3,000 for the solution that we use to disinfect the buildings. That's not on here. And those are just items that came up for order this week. So what we do is we inventory, every Thursday we inventory the schools to see what they need for supplies. So we are always 2 weeks ahead of where they are. And then once we figure out what their 2 week will look like for the upcoming 2 weeks, I should say, we put those orders in. So we are ordering every 2 weeks when we're putting in orders for either PPE or cleaning supplies through the different vendors that we're using.
Michael, can I just repeat what I said, because apparently some people can't hear me?
Sure.
So I'm going to just quickly repeat what I said earlier, because I'm hearing that folks on Zoom cannot hear me. So we've been talking for the last 5 or 6 meetings or whatever since the summer about Chapter 70 money. We based our FY21 budget, and we constructed that, and it was approved based on the fact that we were going to have a 10% cut in Chapter 70 money. Chapter 70 money is money that we get from the state that is earmarked for education. So we developed our budget on that assumption. The budget was passed on that assumption. Since town meeting and since the passing of our budget, the governor has announced that it's going to be level funded Chapter 70, which means that potentially there is $500,000 to $600,000 of additional money that should come to the school department. So that was kind of the framing of Michael's presentation, but apparently folks couldn't hear me.
Sure. So currently we're using 3 different buckets, I'm going to call them, for COVID-19 related expenses. There's the CARES Act that I believe was about $1.2 million that went to the town. There's the allocation, what they're calling the 1 or 2 grant that came to the school department for $565,000. And then there's the operational budget. So those are the 3 buckets currently that we're using for COVID-19 expenses. It's the 102 grant, which is the $225 per student that we received. So those are the 3 buckets that we're currently using. Through the CARES Act, what happens is that when we submit our expenses, first they go through FEMA. FEMA can cover 75% of those expenses if approved, and then the other 25% is allocated to the CARES Act. All those expenses that we put through the town have to be approved, obviously, by the town administrator before they can go through for their second approval. So as of last week, through the 102 grant, which is the $225 per student, we spent approximately $230,000, which is not including the $15,000 that I just approved today. The issue with that federal grant is that all of our expenses have to be accrued as of December 31st. So after December 31st, that funding goes away. So we don't have access to that funding anymore. We had a meeting today with the Department of Education and the representative from the federal government saying that all expenses have to we have to report them to DESE and the federal government quarterly until December 31st. And then after December 31st, whatever we didn't spend actually goes away. So we're trying to do our best to try to get we wrote the grant for nurses, custodians, extra nurses, extra custodians, PPE, technology, and the cleaning supplies. And as you can see, that half of it is already spent. And then through the CARES Act, we submit every 2 weeks to the town items that meet those requirements. So it's not just COVID-19 items that we can put in, they have to meet the requirements of both FEMA and the CARES Act in order for us to submit them. So we have spent so far approximately $420,000 in the CARES Act. And then out of the operational, so anything that's not funded through the 102 grant or the CARES Act has to come out of another bucket, which is the operational budget. And as of today, we have spent approximately $74,000 out of our operational budget. And those expenses are not just cleaning or PPE, they're also the extra teachers that were needed in order to continue providing the education that we're providing today.
Well, I mean, we needed those additional staff members just to open up in a hybrid model. So you heard Steve and Missy and Holly talk about additional or new hires with general aid. So those are the folks that we hired because we needed extra support to not only support our kids in the classroom, but also to cover lunches that are now in the classroom no longer, in the cafeteria. You heard them talk about where they're recessed. They have it spread out over different areas. We need folks out there to support the kids and watch over the kids. So we needed additional staffing across the board. And this isn't a Medfield thing. This is an everybody thing. I mean, people understand that, as I told you guys a million times over the summer, it's not going to be regular school with masks on. It's just not, right? So we had to make all the different protocol changes, all of those different things that we did. And not only does it cost money for the supplies, but we also need additional personnel to make it work so we can open up.
We also are spending that also, does it include also additional buses that we need to be able to get kids here at the same, or is there any movement around the DOE around helping with those bus standards?
So
I know that's something we talked about.
Right. So that the commissioner met with us last week and said that something could be forthcoming on that. The real issue is, again, that we've talked about a million times here at these meetings. We have 71 passenger buses. We can only put 24 kids on right now, given the regulations that we have. So it's extremely problematic. If they can relax that a little bit, and the medical team really hasn't done that, the medical team that's working with DESE and the governor, they have all the documentation, they have all the information. We're just waiting on them to give out either a stay the course, or you can add additional students on the bus. So that's what we're waiting for now.
So thank you, Jeff. So just to continue, as of this week, we've hired 6.2 FTEs for teachers and 5.3 FTEs for teaching assistants. But I believe this that we're still hiring teaching assistants. I also want to make sure that I share with you that we did remember we talked about getting the MARV filters for the schools, and we are in the process of currently replacing all the rooftop unit filters this week at the middle school, high school, and Memorial. And then during Thanksgiving break, we're going to go through every single classroom and replace all the internal filters. So we went from September to November, and now we're going in, as we promised, changing all those filters out, which are the MARV filters, so we can, continue with that plan that we have in place. And those are expensive. We're looking at a replacement about, it's going to cost us about $15,000 just to do this one-time replacement now, and we're going to try to do it 4 times a year. So, that's an additional cost.
And I would just add to that if you remember in our earlier meetings, we talked about Michael kind of being ahead of the curve on this, and getting those MERV 13s and MERV 8s was really important to get those. My colleagues are saying now they can't get them anywhere. There's one school district, I won't say who they are, but they are buying off-size ones, cutting them in half, taping them together, and using them in their system because they can't find that quality of filter in their size, and they're trying to do the best they can with that. But I think, again, that we tried to, our focus was very strong on making sure that we had the safety procedures and protocols in place.
So as of, I'm going to say last week, because there was many more expenses and there's a warrant that's ready to go, we have expended through the 3 different buckets that we spoke about, approximately $720,000 just for COVID-19 related expenses. And that's getting us through last week, and moving forward, those expenses are going to continue to escalate. And I believe the last school committee, I said that it's important that we have a meeting, right, a joint meeting with the warrant committee, the selectmen, and the school committee, because we need to discuss fiscal year 21 and how we're going to project that out as we move forward. And then trying to get an understanding of what the extra Chapter 70 funding that came in. And then the governor came out, a few weeks ago saying that he's going to increase that Chapter 70 for schools moving forward. So there will be additional funding. So I think it's important at this point that we have that joint meeting just to have that discussion.
And I'm sorry, just as a point, because I know there might be people that have kids
in elementary school that don't understand, like, why are you using so many wipes? Like, why is all this happening? So kids at the upper levels, when they switch classes, so when they go in, they take 2 wipes for every class. They walk in, they wipe down the seat, wipe down the desk that they're sitting on, and they hold on to that. And when they leave, they wipe it all down and wipe it down again. So if you multiply that times, it's just simple math, multiply that times the amount of children we have coming in, cohort A, cohort B, number of days of school, periods per day, you'll see why we're using, and we've been really negotiating it down. We're trying to get, Maureen Barrett's done a great job with, trying to negotiate the number down from a 10% per wipe, 7%, whatever, just trying to work with them to get that down. But that's a cost that you never thought you'd have, right? But it's something that, and again, not everyone is doing this. We think it's important to do this in our district for our kids and keep our kids and our staff safe. So we are requiring that to happen. So that comes with a cost.
Okay. Are you set, Michael?
I am. Thank
That,
you.
okay. All right. So now, given that budget update, I'd like to ask Dr. Marston to talk about the school reopening update, and after the school reopening update, and I will open up again to video comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your materials, you had draft version 2 of metrics and considerations for reopening and closing school. So, we met on this last week and we looked at a draft. As I said last week, I'll say it again, because some folks, obviously it was a workshop, there wasn't as many people there. This is something we've been working on for many weeks internally. And now we're putting it together as a document to share. We've had some input from at least one member of the Board of Health. The rest of the Board of Health has this document. They'll be providing input over the next few days, so we can try to finalize. What's that? Okay. I'm echoing. Okay. So that they'll provide input as we try to finalize the document. So, within this document, we look at the metrics, which if we developed a dashboard that will be updated every Thursday. The dashboard was on the website earlier, but it didn't look great on the mobile when you had it on your phone. So we took it down, and Owen's working on resizing that so it looks good on mobile phones, not just on our website. But the dashboard is important because each week we'll be using the DPH data to update it, and we'll have not only the Medfield information on there, but also the information of the TVL teams that our district is playing every weekend. So we look at TVL Pod 1, put those schools in there and those towns on there as well. We're looking at contiguous towns to Medfield and putting what their rate is and what their stoplight metric color is. And then looking at the total number of presumed positives and actual positives in the school district by school. So we're putting that number there. Now, a presumed positive is one that is a positive with the rapid test and not the PCR test. So the state uses the PCR only positives in their reports. But sometimes people go and get the rapid test, they don't get the PCR. As a superintendent, it's a presumed positive to me, we need to act on that. So that's what we've done with the presumed positives. And now we're reporting that out differently so that there's no confusion with when the state numbers come out each week that our numbers look different. So we have a line for presumed positives and then actual positives, and we have a cumulative line where as we go by school. So that dashboard will be updated. I'm sure, I think it'll be up tomorrow. Yeah, so we'll probably have it back up tomorrow. Again, we had it up, we took it down. I know Michael's updating the data that just came out this afternoon. So, that's an important piece too. So that's one of the metrics and the dashboards that we're using. But this document, it really talks about, the reopening of our public schools on the 16th was really a community effort. We had over 90 people involved, as Steve had mentioned earlier in his remarks. In the month of July, we had 10 meetings to kind of develop that reopening plan, which looked at in-person, hybrid, and fully remote models. And what this does is dig down a little bit deeper and look at the metrics and how we'd go about making a decision on whether we'd go full in-person or we'd go full remote. So I'll just go through it. One of the things that is important to remember that safety has always been our guiding principle. We've said that from the beginning. We've said it numerous times tonight. Student and staff safety has been number one for us. It's important to note also that While public health measures are an important component of fully reopening or closing, there are other factors that may be considered, such as capacity of buildings, changes to the current physical distancing, parent-teacher survey data, and active cases in any building or cohort. So we could be in a situation where, in some of our neighboring towns have been in one where they've closed down only one school. So they've had a situation, they've had a staff member or a cluster of students, they've closed down just that one school, but the rest of the district stays open. We could be in that same situation too if we have a cluster and there's some evidence of school spread. So that, that's something that we have to consider. So it's not just cut and dry, if this, then that. These are a guide. So the stoplight metric, which the Mass Department of Public Health has determined the community's readiness for in-person hybrid or in-person full. So I think it's important to note that there is a distinction between in-person hybrid, in-person full, but you still have to be healthy enough to be in a hybrid. So as we know that other districts around us that started in full remote, that just went into hybrid last week or this week, they had data similar to ours, but they chose to do a different route. So we were in 4 or 5 weeks, they're just starting to go in, but that data is clear that it's both hybrid and in person. So when we talk about in-person plan, it means that at any time, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, or 5 days, kids are in person, that's considered an in-person plan. So looking at the average daily incidence rate per 100,000 residents, which I think is something that we've all seen before. The gray, which used to be white when it first came out, now it's gray, or sometimes called unshaded, is fewer than 5 reported cases in the last 14 days. The green is where Medfield was last week and again today. We were green again. Average daily case rate is less than 4 over the 14-day period. Yellow, the average daily case is between 4 and 8. And the red is average daily case is greater than 8 over 14-day period. And one of the things that we've adapted to in the bottom of this is that because Medfield has 13,000, you can make some adjustments in the numbers. So green would be 5 to 6 cases, yellow 7 to 13, and red 14 plus cases. So just kind of drilling it down a little bit closer to what Medfield would look like with our 13,000 residents. So in addition to the Medfield cases, we're paying close attention to the towns that are in the Tri-Valley League pod number 1. Those are the towns that our high school students are playing each weekend during the fall season. And again, this could change in the winter. We don't know what they're going to do, but each weekend, Medfield hosts and travels to one of these communities. So we thought that was a really important factor to keep an eye on because our kids will be in close proximity to those other towns and kids in those other towns. Another group that we need to follow are contiguous towns to Medfield: Westwood, Dover, Sherburne, Walpole, Norfolk, and Millis. And then we're looking at cases 1 town outside. So looking at Needham and Franklin. So 1 town outside, again, because kids travel there for activities. We have staff living in those communities. So we wanted to make sure that we had all of our bases covered and looking at, primarily our data is around Medfield, but looking at secondary sources as well. So the Department of Ed has recommended that school districts use several weeks of data before making any decisions. So they've told us numerous times 3 or 4 weeks of data. For example, if a district is in red, they should not make an immediate decision to go to full remote. Further investigation would need to take place to identify, what is the root cause of it? Is it a situation where, like Andover's had numerous times, or North End or one or the other, that they keep going into red because Merrimack College has a spike, or other communities that have a prison within their town limits. If there's a spike in the prison, they get lumped into the town and all of a sudden they're red when it's really contained to a prison. So they've tried to work on that. And one of the reasons why the data is coming out on Thursdays instead of Wednesdays like they were before is they're trying to mine through that data a little more so that it's more accurate for communities and tease some of that out. So prior to considering a full in-person pivot, the following criteria and conditions would be met. So for Medfield, using DPH's stoplight metric, we would look at 4 consecutive weeks of data reporting in the gray category, and 1 week in the green still could be considered. So there could be a special circumstance where it's tied just to, let's say, a family, just to one family, or it's tied to a nursing home or something like that. We could look at whether or not that was an issue that put us in the green category. No positive cases in the schools for at least 2 consecutive weeks. And this would include both students and staff. And then a percent positive rate of less than 2% for at least 2 consecutive weeks. So those make sense to us in terms of, what we're looking at for Medfield metrics and trying to make those decisions. Again, going back to what we said in the beginning is that the public health is an important piece, but it's one piece. And there are other factors that go into that. So some non-Medfield indicators, which would be our secondary indicators, look at things like Norfolk County, 4 weeks in gray or green with no indication of a rising trend. So the rising trend piece is something we really have to pay close attention to and start to look at the actual numbers versus just colors. So if we start to see communities around us that are starting to change colors and yellow and red at a high rate, we'd start looking at their numbers to see, okay, is this evidence of a rising trend throughout Norfolk County or just a 1-week blip that's showing up in that community? Looking at the TVL pod number 1, communities 4 weeks, gray or green with some yellow could be considered if only 1 week. And then looking at the statewide percentage, positive percentage of less than 2%. So looking at those secondary factors and indicators. And then important to note that meeting that criteria doesn't automatically trigger that we're going in person, because we talked about the other factors we need to consider. But even if those other factors are all set, then we would have to look at giving people a heads up. We can't just, okay, on Friday, we're going to go full remote, or Friday, we're going to go to full in person. We need to give some lead time on that. So it doesn't automatically trigger that. And when I talk about remote, that could be an overnight thing based on data, right? That could happen where we would be in an overnight remote. So the next page, which is different from what we looked at last week, looks at more of an algorithm on how to get there. So looking at 4 consecutive weeks of data in the gray category and 1 week in the green, you see how you get there. Gray, gray, gray 4 times, gray, gray, green, gray, gray, green, gray, 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 green, gray, gray, gray. So different ways of looking at a pathway of how you get there. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because
this makes more sense if you see it.
Yeah, it
just
does.
to let you know. And it will be, yeah.
So I think that's something that we need to look at too, is more as an algorithm how to get there, but it just shows it in a different way. So some folks like to look at math on how to get to it in an algorithm. Some people can look in the text and understand. Either way is fine. So that would be a way to do that. Then we look at some of the priorities for in-person. I think it's no secret that our younger students have more of a challenging time with remote learning. I think that's no secret at all. So one of the things that we made sure that we tried to do this year is that the preschool classrooms they've been full in person since we began. The hours that we had year after year after year for preschool are what the students have right now. So that's been something we're able to do with space and the amount of kids, and that worked out really, really well. By the way, we still have 24 students on a waiting list for preschool as of today. So we accommodated the folks that came in, and we were able to do that in a way that's the exact schedule they had last year, except for the day schedule. They don't come in Wednesdays anymore, but the hours themselves are the same. So we would prioritize, looking at kindergarten, first grade, that memorial kind of group there, that group of kids, as the first priority of getting in full in person if we can do that. And then going to Wheelock, Dale, middle and high school, et cetera. So making sure that our younger students, where you look at the data, they have a lower incidence of spread, based on their age, and they certainly need additional support. Unlike our older students, that they certainly need support, but then they are definitely more independent in terms of their learning and their work than our students that are in K1, 2, 3, et cetera. So we look at the priority around those lower levels. And, I think, one of the things that we've been working on that we're going to roll out to parents next week is we've looked at a couple of models that would have 4 days of live instruction and looking to, possibly move to that in the month of November. We've gotten some data from teachers. Now we're going to ask for some data from parents to get a sense of where they're at with this, because it could be the models that we're looking at, which we'll explain next week in the survey, could substantially change schedules that people have, but it would ensure that kids are in front of their teachers 4 times a week.
And that's at the younger grades. I just want to clarify
that would be looking at elementary only. Yes.
Yeah.
So that is something that we're looking at, and there'll be more information on that sent out to parents next week. So then if we're looking at a full remote pivot, we'll look at the criteria. So Medfield, again, using that stoplight metric, we would look at 4 consecutive weeks in the red. And a week not in the red could still be considered if there were special circumstances. Now, it's a little bit different on the remote because it's not as hard and fast in terms of for red. We could have 2 weeks of red and we have evidence of significant school spread, then we'd go on remote. We're not going to wait for those, well, we can't go now, we got to wait for 2 more weeks of red. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be a decision based on, what is happening, the number of cases, and if there's evidence of in-school spread, that will change things dramatically. So it's a general, looking at the 4 weeks, but that's, again, looking at what DESE's guidance is. They've talked about several 3 to 4 weeks of information before you make any type of pivot. If you remember, there was a district, I forget where it was, a couple of weeks ago that went into the red for 1 week, and they pivoted that next day into remote, and then they went back to full because they thought about it and they decided that wasn't the best thing to do. So I think we're going to look at that, the data. And I have to tell you, I was going to share this with you tonight. On my listserv of, my superintendent listserv, there are communities, well-known communities, that are having discussions right now about closing. And I'm not saying we are, because I don't want people to take this out of context. I'm just saying there are communities that are talking about shutting down their schools and going full remote from Thanksgiving to Christmas break. So that is a conversation. I am not bringing that to you. So please, anyone that's listening, please don't misquote me on that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there is chatter in surrounding pretty close to us of doing that in conversations. So, we're looking at doing what we can to open up, and there are some people that are definitely thinking the other way. And that could be us at some point too, but I just want folks to know that those are the conversations that are going on out there as well.
Those communities are close by.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes,
Close by is right.
Yep.
The fear of the second spike, based on so if you look at the information that came out this afternoon from the Department of Public Health, they listed the number of communities in the red, and it's gone from, I think, 23 a few weeks ago to 70 something. So it's definitely, they're seeing an increase statewide, but I think people are looking at that as something they may consider. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that those conversations are taking place in other communities. And then evidence of significant in-school transmission could trigger a temporary building-specific closure at any time, even if the criteria above is not met. So that's something that we just mentioned. And looking at some of the secondary criteria, again, we looked at Norfolk County, looking at a rising trend, the TVL pod, if there's a significant amount of red over a period of time, or if the TVL has canceled athletic events because of those communities that are in the red. And then, of course, a directive from the governor or DESE that we all shut down would put us directly in remote. So looking at the key dates for data review, so we wanted to kind of work backwards a little bit on some of this. So the first key date that we have for data review would be November 5th. So we'll take a look at that and look back 4 weeks from November 5th and kind of apply our metric and see where we are and either stay the course or talk about other decisions. And we do that again in December, looking at December 3rd. And those dates are different from last week because the state went from the Wednesday to the Thursday reporting. We were looking at Wednesdays as those key dates, but now it's going to be Thursdays. And then we'll look at, in the month of December, establishing additional dates for 2021 are those key dates. And I think we talked about at our workshop on Friday, how important it is to review those key dates where they are, because we may need additional time around holidays or vacations to do a pivot, because it's not, again, not like we can just say, okay, we're going back to school and here we go. It's not that way. There's a zillion things to consider, schedules, bus schedules, there's a million things we got to do before that. And we need some lead time. Not, of course, the most important one is letting people know and letting staff know, letting parents know, those kinds of things. But a lot of, again, the public health piece is one part of it. And I go back to the first page. There are still other indicators that have to be met in order for us to go in. Of course, probably the one that everyone's been talking about is the 6 feet, 3 feet. I will say that, because everyone wants to compare everyone, right? That's what we're doing in the state now. Everyone's comparing, well, how about you're doing like this way and that way and this? how come they're doing it and you're not, and all this stuff. We try to address some of that in the FAQs, because on the surface, when you just see something on Facebook, oh, that makes sense. Why aren't we doing that? But if you don't know how it works, and you don't know things like space constraints or how neighborhood schools work, if you've only had kids in Medfield, and you don't understand how neighborhood schools work, like when you have 180 kids in kindergarten and they're spread out over 5 elementary schools instead of 1, how much easier that is to provide 6 feet and pull in. If you don't know how that stuff works, you just look at it from the surface, you're like, why aren't we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. But you have to understand the context and how it all works. So I think that's a real important thing to note, that anyone that's doing that is still at 6 feet. The only one that's not at 6 feet is Dover Sherburne. They're at 5.5. So they're 6 inches closer than us. But everyone else right now is at 6 feet. There is no one that has gone to 4 feet, 3 feet, whatever. That has not happened. So, urban legend that everyone's doing this and we're the only ones not doing that, that's just not the case.
Yeah, if I had an aha moment around this, I was speaking with a couple of friends from other districts, and 2 well-known districts, and they were, quote unquote, full back, but it turns out that half their district is 100% remote. Like 50% of the district is all remote, and we only have 118 students in full remote. So that dropped the number of kids that actually come to the school, and that's why they were able to do that. To spend that more time in there. So so there was some aha moments in some of the research I was doing on this as well. So
I mean, we have districts around us that have hired principals just to manage the virtual school because they have so many kids. We have districts that are smaller than us, very close by, 1 town away from us, that are smaller, that have almost 300 kids in remote right now in cohort D.
Stoughton has 1,400.
I'm sorry?
Stoughton has 1,400.
1,400. Yeah. So, I mean, apply that to what you have, and you bet there's some open seats. You bet there's some open seats. I know that Needham has 600 at remote in cohort D. I know Wellesley's got a lot. So, and Needham has 6, and they still can't do anything with 6 feet because they don't have the space. They're not going to even look at it unless it goes to 3 feet because they don't have the space to do it. So I think that, having our model that we have now, where everyone goes through all elementary schools, it's very positive, it's efficient, but I would say the neighborhood school model, I'd take that any day right now because we could get more kids in. We definitely could. And we just don't have that. So we have to work with what we have, but I think people need to understand the limitations in what we're doing. But you can't just read something on Facebook and just assume that, oh, everyone can do that, because that's just not the way the world works. It's not how education works. It's really not, you need to know the context of how it's being done, what it's being done, and you just can't make incredible assumptions that people are making. So that's my soapbox for the day. But I mean, I think it's just an important piece that people need to understand that. So that's what we look like. That's what it looks like with the metrics and the considerations. So this has been in the hands of the Board of Health, not for very long, and they are going to give me individual feedback, not as a group, but individually. We're going to take that input, and then I'll provide you with another draft of it. And then I know this draft will be posted online tomorrow as a artifact from the meeting. So if folks want to see that, they can take a look at it. But it won't be final; it'll just be draft version 2 that's on there, and then we'll look at finalizing it. But that key number. That key date is November 5th that we'll look at the information and kind of work backwards on the 4-week look back and see where we're at.
Jeff, do you need a meeting on the 5th?
Yeah, we could.
Thinking about it.
Yeah.
I know I surveyed each of you individually to see if that was something we could do, and I think we can hold it as a placeholder right now, and then we'll finalize it.
Yeah, I think.
Unless we want to just.
Well, I think based on what comes out of the information, the survey information from teachers and the survey information from parents, which will happen next week for parents, then we can take a look at the couple of models that we're working with right now, rolling some of that out at that time. So.
There's no shortage of it anyway. Do we want to schedule the 5th now and then leave it to cancel?
You can always cancel it.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
you
so
can
let's
always
do that.
cancel.
So we'll schedule a meeting for the 5th. We don't need to vote that. That's just,
No, I think, and when the survey goes out next week, it's going to be pretty clear what the models are. So it's not going to be what if, like, this is what we're looking at. There'll be separate surveys, 2 separate surveys, one for K and one for grades 1 through 5. And just to get feedback, to see temperature check and see where people are at, because we have some really, pretty good ideas of what we want to do, and have kids in front of teachers 4 days a week. So.
and go to calendar. So do we need to vote this? All right.
Yeah,
All
sure.
right. There's no problem.
I'd like to make a motion to add a meeting on November 5th, 2020.
So moved, actually, that meeting, once again, I also, just to let people know and to solidify this, we've decided to start moving the open meeting back to 7 o'clock and doing executive session. I surveyed each of you individually to see if that would be acceptable to you, so that we can really kind of be able to spend a little bit more time if we need to at the end of the night, but really to also try to get us back to our families a little sooner for everyone concerned. So it would be November 5th at 6:30 executive session if we needed it, and 7 o'clock public meeting. So
moved.
Is that a second? Okay. Leo?
Tim?
Aye.
And me?
Aye.
Jessica Riley, aye, and the motion passes.
So I would just add to that, just to remember the data that we get from DPH will probably be out about 4 or 5 o'clock on that day. So we're gonna have a meeting with the data right out, within an hour or so. So just so you know.
Jeff, at the end of your presentation on this, is there anything that you want to ask Jeff about before I open up to video comments? We all have to look at, and we've been really thinking about this very hard. Shall I open up? Okay. So now, if you would like to open or to come over via video to do public input, you are most welcome to do that. If you would raise your hand, which is something you can do at the bottom of the screen, it will pop you up to the top of the screen. And I will have Owen bring you over. All you have to do is announce your name and your address, which is part of the public record. So I'll give you about 45 minutes. I'm sorry, it just feels like 45 minutes, 45 seconds, a minute to kind of collect your thoughts and see if you have any questions specifically about our rain entry plan right now. You are always more than welcome to email us. I've certainly received a great deal of emails this week about people being concerned about your kids, and we always respect that. On the open part, yeah, I was going to do it at max 15 minutes, but I think we're going to be okay. All right, do I have anybody who would like to come over by video, or would you like to think on this, take a look at it, see what you think, and give us feedback by email? All right, I'm going to wrap that up then. And we can move on to the, there's one. Oh, great. Amara, thank you. This is Amara Kammerer. Can you bring her over, please, Owen? He is, he's working it. Hi, Amara. It's so nice to see your face. I've gotten letters from you. Can you hear me? Okay, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Hi, Amara. It's nice to see you.
Hi, you too. Thanks for taking my question. I was just wondering if the metrics that Dr. Marsden just laid out are met, are there any other blockers to pivoting to a in person full time?
Jeff, do you want to answer that? Okay.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that we would look at, the capacity of the buildings and the changing of our current physical distancing might be an issue. I mean, those would be blockers there. So we'd have to look at those types of things, and either, parent and teacher survey data too. I think, just as, some folks have written me in the school committee around wanting to reopen, I've gotten a lot of emails about staying the course for hybrid too. So I don't think, not everyone is 100% on board with either one of these. So we'd have to look at those additional factors in making that decision.
May I ask just one follow-up about that survey?
Sure.
So will the survey assess kind of parent input and position on kind of currently, because I know parents were asked over the summer for their opinions on kind of what they were hoping for as far as in-person, hybrid, or remote model. Will the survey assess where parents currently are in terms of their preference on the models for in-person, hybrid, or just a current assessment of where parents are at?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we'll put that as a question on there for you.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's
you.
fair, because that'd be a nice comparison based on what we had in the summer.
Great. Thank you.
Jeff, I have a follow-up question on some of that.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Amari.
Yeah, it's okay. What is the equipment demand that would be needed for a full return? Because I know that we went and ordered desks and whatnot to accommodate half the student body back. In the event that we would bring them back full, I mean, would we go back to, do you foresee us going back to the tables and having people sitting next to each other, or are we going to maintain some distancing and have to order more desks? I guess this, something along those lines is my concern.
Well, it depends on what grade level you're talking about. I think that we have some extras at some levels, and some we'd have to order. We are still using some tables in some grade levels and some classrooms, because we're able to have 6-foot tables with kids at either end, and they're working out fairly well. Again, we went pretty strong with the shields too, and the desk dividers, which not a lot of people have. So we've put a lot of thought and effort into the safety piece of it and making sure that our kids were safe. And that's how we're able to use some of those tables. But I think we'd have to get probably some additional technology, and certainly some tables and some desks and chairs as well. That's with the model that we're working on now that we're going to be sending out to parents next week. Just that model alone would be additional chairs, additional technology, because there could be additional classrooms added, and then transportation costs, because additional runs might happen. So I think there's a lot of cost to it. I mean, it underscores why it's important for us to make sure we get that Chapter 70 money, because the expenses aren't going away, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, the Chapter 70 money is going to become ever important in order for this to get back more in person, with some of the restrictions that need to be met. Not restrictions, safety measures. I don't want to call them restrictions, but the safety measures. I thank you.
I mean, this is a virus. We can't predict it. We try very hard, and we know a lot more than we did in July. Some of that is not necessarily positive for getting kids back into school. But I think that if we are able to emphasize that having that Chapter 70 money is what may allow the most children that we are capable of getting in front of teachers, versus kind of essentially a pretty small reduction in what the tax bill might be for most of the town. I think that given that option, very few people would say I would prefer to have fewer kids in school so I could have that small reduction. But we'll certainly have to have those conversations with the selectmen and the warrant committee and see where those numbers are. But as Representative Garlick did emphasize, Chapter 70 money is educational funding. And we appreciate all of the funding that we get from town. But right now, we have extraordinary expenses, and we need as much support as we can possibly get. And unfortunately, in Medfield that falls to Medfield, because the state and the federal government are only doing so much. So that is my soapbox for this evening. Do I have any comments from the rest of the committee, or would anybody else like to put themselves in queue for a public input? No? Okay. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I have muted myself because I think I checked out just then. The Dale Street School project update, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we had our school building committee meeting last night. And we had, I think do we have a forum since our last one? The kind of weeks are all going into one after another.
Every day.
Yeah,
ends in Y.
yeah, and every day ends in Y. So we've had that, and then looking at another forum for the Wheelock neighborhood in early November. But we're still on course with our preferred schematic submission. That again, if you don't know, those that are watching, that we've delayed the project. Now we've had 3 separate delays on this that we've looked at to try to get more community input and so on. So we're back on course on that, and I know that Anna Mae had a subcommittee meeting today. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything else to either Leo or Anna Mae that are on the school building committee.
Yeah, so that Wheelock Neighborhood Forum is going to be Monday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. So a couple of things. We're going to have a sandwich board over on Wheelock. I've got to send an email to Holly to make sure that's okay. And also the town is helping us print and send targeted postcards to the Wheelock neighborhood, the surrounding streets, so we can maximize attendance and allow neighbors to know that. And really what's going to the focus, or the priority rather, of this Wheelock Neighborhood Forum is really to address their concerns. Traffic is a huge piece. And also we've had a couple of requests to stake out the property of where they're planning on building the school. However, it's a little premature now, but we are going to do a pre-recorded via drone of the area, and that'll be part of the public forum, just so people have a real visual of what that's going to look like. And we're going to also encourage residents to send in emails to that Dale Street Project email address at Gmail. Any other concerns? So we know that traffic is huge, but we do want to solicit any other concerns that the neighbors have so that we can address them.
They did do a traffic study this week.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's part of it as well.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's pretty fancy equipment, I have to tell you. I saw it on the stop sign this morning.
all right. And right now we'd love to do, we're going to do also an email campaign push. So if you go to the medfield.net website and click on Dale Street Project, really right at the top there is a spot where you could subscribe to emails for the Dale Street Project. So we'd love people to receive emails about the project. So please go to medfield.net, Dale Street Project, and share your email. A lot of people have said, can't you just harvest the Zoom emails? We can't do that. So we really need to have people freely and willingly give us their emails.
I have a question, Anna Mae. You said you were going to send targeted mailings to, so the forum would be specifically for the people that were sent those mailings that live.
Yes, but the public is definitely welcome.
Anyone can come.
Anyone. It's still a public meeting, but we do want to focus on the neighbors.
Right. Okay.
Elm Street, Cross Street, all those surrounding streets. We're working with the Board of Assessors to get those addresses. So, yeah.
All the way down Elm Street over to Phillip, because I know that there have been some people who have concerns about.
Yeah, Phillip's on the list. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's my update. Anything else you want to add, Leo?
No,
Okie dokes.
I think you covered it. Yep.
Thank you.
The next one, oh, God love Mary. She's probably been on here for a while, or I don't know. This is about the second reading of the Title IX policies and a potential vote if none of us see issues or differences over the first and second reading. I mean, these are essentially mandated as to what we need to do, and we've done trainings with them already.
Right.
As Dr. Marsden said, they, may change, but it would take 2 years.
Is Mary
to kind of go
coming?
through.
Or
I don't know if Mary's coming or not. Mary, I love you. She is.
Oh, and do you
Oh,
want
and
to
do you
bring
want to
her
bring her over?
over? Thank you.
Thank you.
Assuming Mary.
Assuming Mary.
I don't know if she would, but
Surprise, surprise.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Mary.
Hey, welcome back, Mary.
Great to see everyone.
All right. So does anybody have any questions, or is there anything you want to tell us, Mary, about these particular policies, or anybody from the policy subcommittee who would like to chime in on these before we potentially take a vote if there's a motion?
The only kind of update to the policies that we changed was just to make me the overarching Title IX coordinator for the district. And we took the principals off of the Title IX coordinators. That gives me the flexibility of kind of reaching out to people when we have kind of claims of any Title IX grievance that we want to go through. I can reach out to people myself and then appoint investigators and decision makers from there. It also, as a result of us being trained the other day, we do have the ability now to train anyone within the district. So if there's any needs of kind of changing of staff, or if there are other staff that we would like to be able to have as investigators or as decision makers, we do now have the ability to train directly with those staff as well, which is great.
Megan or Tim?
Yeah, I was okay with it.
So given that nobody seems to be, now I'm hearing an echo, but given that nobody seems to have any major concerns about the policy as written as we've read it now, does anybody? Oh, okay. Do I hear a motion to pass the policy for the Title IX policies as written?
so
Presented?
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Tim seconds. Leo?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Anna Mae?
Aye.
And Jessica Riley, aye. The policies passed unanimously. And thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks for your
Yeah,
work
thanks,
on
Mary.
that.
Much appreciated.
Just 100 questions of Megan and I in that first meeting, so thank you so
She's a
much.
very thorough person. That is true. Okay, now we will go to informational items. And another person I would really like to thank for hanging in with us is Andrew Barrett, who is the student rep and has sat through some of the longest meetings on record. So thank you. I know that this is, it may not be past your bedtime, but it's almost past mine. So thank you. I understand it really. And you've really taken a lot of initiative. So do you have things that you would like to update us on in terms of student life and how things are going, or your opinions on anything that we've spoken of tonight?
Not really. I just have a few updates about what student council is doing and planning on right now. So basically, we're still working on getting our full council back together. We're just wrapping up getting the walk-ons on. We're doing interviews next week, so then by the hopefully start of November, we're going to have a full council. We can start kind of firing with all cylinders with what little we can do. And one of those events that we can do that we're kind of excited about is a hot chocolate stand during the mass break. So when it's like 40 degrees out and it's 9 in the morning and you have to go outside, then you're going to be able to get some hot chocolate. So that's kind of one of our main fundraisers that's in the works right now. A lot of our other events can't happen because of COVID concerns, and we pushed a lot of them to the spring, but we're trying to get creative and make the most of it. So that's kind of all I have, but yeah.
That is a lot. Thank you. And I think that probably Mr. Gavigan and Mr. Ornberg and I will be calling on you to help us, you know, along with whatever students end up wanting to be part of the logo discussion or the warrior discussion, to be able to really do that outreach to make sure that students are understanding what's going on. So, but we can talk more about that later.
Yeah, I have a few friends I know
Thank you.
about it. So I might have a few names that you can add to your list.
All right.
All right. Oh, thank you. All right. We're going to put that together and sorry, I just heard something behind me. We will put that together and we'll reach out as well. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew.
Anyone else? Informational?
I have one thing.
You have one thing?
Just one thing. I just want to recognize and thank all of our teachers for the work they've done on PIN and Open House. Again, they've gone above and beyond with developing their either own screencastify or videos. And, you know, that's not an easy thing to do if you're not used to it. And they've obviously honed their skills during asynchronous learning in the springtime, but they really, I got to see about 20 of them from different buildings, and they were just really, really well done. So I want to just, you know, thank them for their hard work every day, but also this little extra they did for this was really appreciated. So thanks.
Anyone, Anna Mae, do you have anything that you want to report or?
You know, I just want to mention, although I didn't attend, I've heard some feedback that the high school PTO meeting was last night. And I think it was very much appreciated that the high school leadership was in attendance to answer questions. So I just want to shout out and say thank you to those folks who made that happen. That's it.
Yeah, I attended said meeting, and despite the Zoom bombing that was prevalent, which was my first experience with Zoom bombing. So it was kind of, it wasn't cool, but I don't know what the word is, but it was enlightening. You know what, the show went on, though. The show went on, and that's, there you go.
You get to check that off on your
I did,
COVID
yeah,
bingo
it's
card.
on the bucket list, and
Yeah.
I apparently will be sitting in on a warrant committee meeting tomorrow, and hopefully we'll start on the same page and we'll go from there. I don't know if any of you are also going to the Challenge Success webinar that is tomorrow. No, maybe. Well, I am. Okay. So I will report back to you on that. And it has escaped me what the actual speaker is right now, but I'm sure it'll be good. So I'll report back to you on that. And that's all I have.
Two comments, just reinforcing, I think everyone here knows, like, I really have been saying things like the PTO meetings, site councils and networks that we have is one of the best ways to get feedback. You know, getting that feedback local. I hope we keep doing that. And second comment is on a lighter moment. I had probably one of the first felt like 100% normal school moment. And thank you. I won't say which school or daughter, but somebody opened up the grade books, and it felt just like last year as I was talking to our daughter about where they can improve. So, you know, getting that back, it felt the exact same at least. So I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, just I want to thank the schools and the staff. Have been wonderful. If you haven't heard Aaron Watson out with the megaphone during dismissal time, you don't know what you're missing. So definitely you want to go by and hear that show. Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking, right? You know, but everybody's been it's been really good and lively. The feedback I've been getting is from teachers and parents has been good. So please keep it coming. Both, you know, for and against what's happening. I know it's a tough time for everybody, and the feedback is being heard. So I appreciate it. And as you know, everyone is doing the best that they can. And I think we have a great path forward. So I'm really excited about that.
I probably have something, but I got nothing right now. So, and Jeff has one more.
Thank you. I just want to recognize MCPE is doing their One Medfield initiative, and they are, if you haven't seen, I saw 3 of them today, actually, the end of driveways that they're painting the Medfield M and the hashtag One Medfield. So I want to just promote that. They're also doing something called Humans of Medfield Public Schools, where they're putting posts on social media featuring photos of teachers, administrators, and school staff in their environment and what they're doing. So really positive, informative stories to give a peek in the day-to-day lives of what public school staff do. So I just really appreciate the work that they're doing. They're pretty limited in what they can do with fundraising this year, so they've been extremely creative in what they can do, and also want to, as Tim had said, promote the positivity that's going on in the district. So I want to recognize the work that they're doing and thank them.
All right, thank you. And I am the owner of one of those One Medfield driveway markers, and I love it. And everybody the FedEx guy asked me today what that was all about. So I thought that was kind of nice. And also they are running a fundraiser right now that is essentially like a distance marathon kind of thing where you can sign up in teams. And I was going to suggest to the school committee that we might want to be a team, but we can talk about that later. As a bunch of friends on our school committee. And I think that is about it. I think that this might be our first meeting that ends before 10 in months. So thank you all very much. Do I have a motion? Is there future agenda? Yes, thank you.
We all support each other. All right, so for future agenda items, we have the superintendent's evaluation. We were initially thinking of that on November 12th. But I think maybe Jeff, you and I can have a discussion about when we specifically do that.
Sure.
That we are still trying to get back into school.
I certainly don't want to
Jeff definitely did that to just kind of make things challenge success, student feedback, social learning, and standards-based report feedback. We will also continue to update project on reentry on budgets. Clearly, very close right now. So with that, we will have a motion to adjourn. Leo.
Second.
Anna Mae. So Leo.
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Anna Mae?
Aye.
Jessica Riley? Aye. Thank you ever so much. We may see you on November 5th. You'll know about that.